What does courage mean to you? Is it the strength to face a roaring lion, or is it the bravery to stand up for what's right? In truth, courage doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the small decisions we make, the tiny steps we take, which truly define our courage. It's about facing our fears and standing tall, no matter how big or small. Now let's delve into a tale about a tiny creature with a gigantic heart, showing us the true essence of courage. In a peaceful forest lived a tiny mouse named Tim. Tim was no ordinary mouse. Despite his petite size, he had a heart full of kindness and a spirit of camaraderie. He was everyone's best friend in the forest, always ready to lend a tiny paw to anyone in need. Every day was a new adventure for him, scampering through the undergrowth, playing hide-and-seek with the butterflies, and sharing his cheese with the ants. Tim was loved by all, from the towering trees to the tiny insects. But there was one thing that Tim was afraid of: the dark. As the sun set and shadows loomed, Tim would retreat into his cozy burrow, his heart pounding with fear. The thought of what might lurk in the darkness was enough to send chills down his tiny spine. But one day, a situation arose that required our tiny Tim to face his biggest fear. A raging storm had hit the forest, and Tim's best friend Sammy Squirrel was stuck in a hollow tree. Now imagine this. The night was as dark as ink, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves. And there, in the middle of this tempest, was Sammy, trapped and scared. His home, a once cozy hollow tree, had now become his prison. The entrance was blocked by a fallen branch, and he couldn't get out. Meanwhile, tiny Tim, a small and timid rabbit, was safe and warm in his burrow. But he couldn't rest, not while his friend was in danger. Despite his fear of the dark, he knew he was the only one who could help. So he made a decision that would require all the courage he could muster. With a deep breath, Tim stepped out into the storm. The wind whipped his fur and the rain soaked him to the bone, but he pressed on, his heart pounding like a drum. Every shadow made him jump, every thunderclap made him flinch, but each time he reminded himself of Sammy, alone and scared. And each time he found the strength to move forward. His journey was fraught with challenges. He had to dodge falling branches, navigate slippery paths, and even jump over a roaring stream. But with each obstacle he overcame, he felt his courage growing. The darkness didn't seem so scary anymore, the storm not so fierce. Finally, he reached the hollow tree. With a mighty push, he managed to move the fallen branch, blocking the entrance. And there was Sammy, shivering but safe. Tim helped him out of the tree, and together they made their way back to Tim's burrow. It was a long and arduous journey, but they made it. Sammy was safe, and Tim, well, he was no longer just Tiny Tim, he was Tiny Tim, the brave. With a racing heart but a determined spirit, Tiny Tim had saved Sammy. Tiny Tim may have been small, but his courage was monumental. Let's take a moment to reflect on our story. We've journeyed with Tiny Tim, a little fellow with a heart as vast as the ocean. His size never defined him, but his courageous spirit did. When faced with a daunting challenge, Tim didn't shrink back in fear. Instead, he displayed a magnificent act of bravery, proving that true courage is not about physical size, but the size of one's heart. Courage, as we've seen through Tim's story, is not about the absence of fear. It's about acknowledging that fear and choosing to push through it. It's about standing up, even when your knees are trembling, and taking that leap of faith, because it's the right thing to do. Tiny Tim taught us that courage is not a trait reserved for the strongest or the bravest. It is a virtue that resides within us all, waiting to be awakened. His act of courage wasn't just about overcoming a personal fear. It was about making a difference, about standing up for what is right, even if he stood alone. So as we close this chapter of our journey, let's remember Tiny Tim's lesson. Let's remember to face our fears, not because we are fearless, but because we are brave enough to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Remember, no act of courage, no matter how small, is ever wasted.